All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session on creating and implementing visualizations. I'm Shane J. Fairbairn, which I realized I didn't introduce myself. I keep on not doing that when I'm like the speaker person. And then we have Jake Massey over here as well. And we will be recording this session. We're gonna probably edit out a lot of the ums and the uhs. So there was one right there for you. But this is who we are, and if you want to reach out to us, we'll have our contact information as well. But primarily this session is going to be focused on all of the things that we do as a consortium, NEFEC, so we represent our member districts, and we are also a member of the Florida Collaborative on Operational Data for Educators. So you can see that on my shirt, Florida Code, representing NEFEC. This is what we do. So our organization, the Northeast Florida Educational Consortium, our purpose is to help member districts cooperatively meet their educational goals and objectives by providing programs and services the individual districts would not be able to provide as effectively or as economically acting alone. So that speaks to a lot of what we do. So we know that resources don't always just come in terms of money, dollars, funding. We're talking about people and that sweat equity that goes in there, and thought partners, and just all of those things that we can do better if we do them together. So I have 3 goals for you today, and I encourage you to look back to them during this session and when we get towards the end, and also when you're filling out that survey for us, which we would super appreciate. It's really quick, it's like maybe 2 minutes. That'll help provide us with some information so that we can improve the summit. We do this every year. We can also reach out to you if you include your information, but please don't feel like you need to. So we want to show that you can do this, whether you're creating a visualization that shows, the number of teachers that are in a school building. Okay, you can do it. You might not be able to do it just by yourself. We'll give you some of the things that have worked for us, and you can apply those. You can reach out to us, but you can do it. Think about starting small and growing up from there. Go too big, too quickly, you're going to have a bad time. But realize too that once the data standard opens up and you see that this work, that we can leverage work from the collaborative in Florida and the EdFi collaborative nationally, people are going to want more. So we want you to be able to quench that thirst for your district's reporting and visualization needs. You will see some visualizations that are absolutely amazing. Probably not in our presentation today. Ours are more practical. So just think about, okay, well, if I wanted to do this, what is my next step? Like, okay, I don't want to build this humongous, massive thing that's really complex, but I want to start with something small. So, okay, we also want you to have the people that you can reach out to within the collaborative, but we also want to ignite that fire, that passion that you need to take that next step. So think about those things as we're moving forward. And again, we're going to record this session. So I would encourage you to share this presentation and also refer back to it, these goals as we go through it. Jake, did you have anything you want to add about our goals?
No, I think that's it. I think that's good. And I love that first one, the show that you can do this. And as I'll talk a little bit later, I think one of the reasons I'm here, Shane makes me appear much smarter and better at this than I actually am, and I think I'm proof that that you can do this, and that's part of the the data standard and working with the collaborative is that stakeholders from across all experience levels. I spent time as a classroom teacher, and now I'm a program development and training specialist, just kind of working as a coach with math teachers. Technology development isn't necessarily in my wheelhouse, but because of the collaborative, because of the standardization that happens, it's something that any stakeholder can get involved with and encounter in a very sort of intelligent looking way. So.
Well, thank you for giving me more credit than is due. So you saw this at the general session. Hopefully you were able to attend it. the whole purpose of our collaborative is to provide a modern data infrastructure to simplify the integration and use. I can't think of any more ways that we could draw attention to that use piece of it, of education data at all levels. So not only do we want to provide the structures and the collaborative opportunities and networking that's part of being in the collaborative, we also want people to use it. So we find practical use cases that impact a lot of people, from students, caregivers, educators, consortia, or educational service agencies. So we'll talk about some of those things. We're not going to go into like every single report that we've ever built and try to show you how amazing we are. Our purpose is to show you, yeah, you can do this. Here's some ways that we've approached it and why we've approached it that way. And here's some things to avoid. Hopefully that won't be the end of our conversation, and we'll be able to keep this going for a while. So this, it looks like it's complex. That's how I know it's complex. But this is a typical, well-defined networking structure, like in your building. All of this is made easier if people are playing by the same standards. So if we're talking, Sharad Keen mentioned this morning about Bluetooth. Well, Bluetooth is a standard. It doesn't matter what device you have. It doesn't matter what country you're in. As long as you follow the standard, your technology is going to work. And it's easier to go from one country to another, one state to another, one school to another, one classroom to another, if you're all speaking the same language, the same standards. We have standards all over the place. In education, we're a little bit behind the eight ball. But we're working on it, and we have been for a long time with FI's support. And then all those people you saw on the map and all the people here today are help not only making the case, but actually doing it. Like, okay, yeah, we walk the walk. We've got that fire, we walk the walk. And so it's a lot easier, even for your vendors. So if you have a vendor that says, okay, I'm going to work with the EdFi interface, I'm going to use these standards from my technology. The minute that they finish that and it works, they can immediately let other districts use it. They can immediately plug in the other systems because all of those data standards are the same. And it just works. When it's beautiful. It works. It's beautiful when it works. So all of that complexity can be tamed, and this is some work that we've been engaged in for a long time. As Troy Wheeler mentioned, 2015 is about when we really started. And then we founded FLCODE as a collaborative, a nonprofit, so that we could like build the clout we needed within the state and help out educators as we're trying to get the Department of Education involved and to get others to see the value in having an educational standard. But we built reports for college and career readiness, engagement from students, assessment. So like we have this huge period where there's just like, I don't know, patchwork is the best way to put it, I think. But basically like a piece of Swiss cheese when we talk about assessment. And so like all of those pieces of cheese that exist, let's take those and see how a student is progressing from whatever assessment information we have. And that's something that I think this setting, I don't like to use those words that we hear all the time, but the environment that we're operating in right now, it's helpful to be able to find those pieces of information that you have, know that you can trust them, and then be able to act on them to support students and educators. And then equity is a really big one. Not only we have federal requirements, state requirements, but then you also might have program requirements, grant requirements, or you might have an initiative where you're trying to promote equity. And these are just some of the things that can be tamed with your data visualizations and FI operational data store. And so if you did not know what ODS meant when you started this session, hopefully you do. That is the operational data store, and we will be using that as an acronym for a while. I encourage you to keep track of your questions. We're going to go through this. We're not going to stop for questions for this session because we have to have time to no, just kidding. We have a session set up right after this, after a biotech break. We'll have a session after this where you can ask us anything about visualizations, how things have worked, and really encourage you to grill us during that Ask Me Anything. So some of the partnerships, you'll see EdFi at the bottom here. So NEFEC is a member of the FLCODE, the collaborative. We're a founding member, so we had a lot of input in this, but NEFEC is not the only part of the collaborative. We provide a lot of the daily goings on. We do a lot of the professional learning and training, so like Power BI and different presentations and stuff. So we support the collaborative, but we are not the collaborative. So that's an important distinction to make. But the great thing about it is we have services that we provide to our districts. So we do professional learning, we do standards review, we do college and career readiness, we do human capital review. I mean, any possible thing you can think of that we need to, we got. So we need to have some partners to help with that work. We've had a lot of support from Skyward, Curriculum Associates, Mastery Connect, and EdGraph. And just to let you know, your voice matters. So even if you're not able to, create like these really awesome visuals, and you're like, oh man, I feel really, I don't know, unsure that I'm really contributing. Just your voice, just your membership helps, and your perspective helps, because we're not just technology, we're not just teaching and learning, we're not just integration. We are collaborative, made up of educators and professionals that do this stuff. So some of the visualizations. So let's start with this. Sorry if you're hungry. Dr. Winek, our executive director, is on today. I apologize in advance for that delicious looking ice cream sundae. So if I said, let's have a dessert, is this the first thing that comes to your mind? Probably not. We wouldn't call that a main course. Well, I mean, maybe my dad would be a main course, but for most people, they wouldn't say that that is part of the fruit group, right? They would say, okay, this is not really, a fruit, but we know that it's a dessert. Okay, well, there's some things that we know are going to make it qualify as a dessert. And part of that is just defining what those things are. So does our dessert have to be sweet? Yes. Okay. So that standard is, we go, okay, all desserts have to be sweet. We all agree on that. We're good. Next step. Okay. Does it have to include fruit? No, it does not have to include fruit, but can it? Yeah, definitely can. And you see how it starts to get more and more complex as we move along. Your visualizations are the same way, and you should approach them the same way. I work with districts all the time, back and forth, trying to figure out exactly the best way to present those data accurately. And so I'll say, okay, what do you want to see? Well, I want to see this. Okay, what do you currently use? Well, I use this. All right, well, how is this different? And we start asking questions. Before we're building anything, we're just asking questions and really trying to define what we call the use case. So when we give them a dessert that we've created together, we all agree that it's a dessert, and we all agree on the components of that dessert. Yes, it takes time. It takes a lot of time when you're building a visual. So we have a page set up at NEFEC that hosts all of our visualizations. We use a lot of tools that are free to use. And so as you go through these, you'll see like Google and stuff like that. It's great because it doesn't cost anything additional. It helps us get these visualizations out easily to any educators that they impact. And also gives us a way to showcase in places like this really quickly, so you can go back or send this link on to somebody else that you think could benefit from them. We kind of group our visualizations into those that are publicly available and those that are secure. And so those that are secure, you wouldn't have access to those right out of the gate. But any of our publicly available visualizations, you can look at, still ask questions about, but those are all freely available for you to look at and ask questions about and interact with, I guess. And you're going to see a lot of faces other than ours. Our work is made easier because we collaborate. We have people that do some parts of things and people that do other parts of things, but we all work well together as a collaborative. I don't know, man. I just love this. I just want to take a moment and look at this and just see what you think about these pieces of information that are flowing from one side of the screen to the other and what's happening as they move along. That's a pretty cool visual, but it doesn't tell me a whole lot about what's going on. But what it does help me understand is that when I create a visualization, I'm really funneling or filtering what a person can see. So on the left side are all of the things that are available. Let's talk about student information. So some of those things can go freely through. So you can see at the very top, those data just flow straight over to that endpoint. But then you look down at the next block and you see that it splits up, and then there's more filters. And this is kind of what visualization is. Well, really any kind of information. There's some really cool, I know that most people don't say there's really cool blog posts, but there's really cool blog posts about data visualization and about unpacking this. So if you're interested in that, just send me a follow-up and I'll be able to share that with you. And I was gonna say, don't forget to like and subscribe, but I don't think we do that here, do we, Jay? But basically, when you're creating a visualization, you're filtering out ways in which people can understand and that they appropriately have permission to those sources of data. And so as we talk about those structures, think about things that don't have a lot of security filters or any at all, and those that are down to the individual student elements. Okay. So I'll just go over a few of these visualizations, and then we'll talk with Jake about how these are implemented, some issues that we have going through, and we'll talk about things that you look at that are maybe confusing or you have more questions about. For that, ask me anything. I also forgot to mention that we do have a giveaway, so we may be asking you some questions at the end. Or we may just spin the wheel and see who we get from this session. So here's an example of a visualization that includes a lot of different elements from the student domain. And we built these not in isolation, thinking about what would be cool, but working in partnership with Dixie, Flagler, Levy, PK Young, and Union schools in their districts. So we find out what we think is important. We make sure that those data are flowing into the operational data store. Everything's secure and accurate, and we work with our partners to build these reports. So you can see group reports. I want to see all of my students. I can see those. I have Mastery Connect because they've been a great partner with us. iReady. Other student programs are up there, so you could have you have some teachers that need to see all that 504 information really quickly, their IEP information, identify those students. You can do that through these types of visuals. But this combines a lot of different reports into one view. And you'll see the filters that are on the right-hand side. These are all the demographic things that you're asked about all the time. So, what's a student age? Are they in the ESC program? Are they an English learner? Are they in the gifted program? And so you can see about anything that they look at on here, they can add their dimension to it. So if they're from federal programs, they may be looking at one part of it. If they're doing interventions, they might be looking at another part of it. But it really is tailored on what they need for those student elements. Just doing a quick look to make sure I got all that. Okay. So this is an example of one. You can see the student name is I don't know, redacted. Kind of sounds a little bit ominous. Student information is removed, but we have the demographic information. This is the student page. So we can see all of the FSA information on one side of it and all of the iReady information on the other. And we can see, okay, yeah, the student's doing well and in their math and not in iReady, and we can drill down to those objectives. Not only do we have a level, but then we know exactly what objectives, and historically, so any assessments that we have, we're able to roll those up. And the great thing about building this is we're not a vendor. EdFi is not a vendor. We're a collaborative member, so we can share out this work as a collaborative, and we own it. We own our data. We own our work. We may work with vendors, but a specific vendor is not required for the type of work that we do. And we've been very careful about making sure that we're self-sustaining. In the human capital domain, This, again, is supporting educators. So building level administrators, district administrators can look at, their human capital of the people that drive their building. And we can see, what their evaluations are, what their experience is for instructional, non-instructional, and then all those different elements across the top, their absences, degrees, separation, certification, all of those things. And you can really drill down into those student records. If you're considering a staff member student, but you can drill down into, and it also uncovers some data quality things, because what we found through our work is that if the state doesn't require it to be reported, sometimes it's not maintained. And this helps provide a data quality view into your human capital. I'm just waiting to rest my instrument, I'll turn it over to you. So our process, we focus on meeting essential needs. Okay, what do they need? Early warning system. Okay, got it. So if a district needs an early warning system, we're able to do that. We're able to have all the elements that are outlined in statute. Awesome. Do they need progress monitoring? Yes, we have structures to create progress monitoring visualizations, and that could be, something that's clickable and interactive, or it could be something as simple as creating an Excel document or a CSV document that they can interact with. We focus on low-hanging fruit, so things that you can do to not only learn how to use the technologies, but also to make sure that you're showing the value of this work as you move along, because nobody wants to wait eight months for something to show their superintendent or to show their school board. So we focus on iterating, which means we produce something quickly. We get it right, awesome. If we don't, then we go back and we fix it, or we change it, go back. And so we go back and forth and shape it exactly how it's going to work for our use case. This really looks great, like a quote up on the right-hand side. I just put it there and then put quotes on it, and it looked just so much more legitimate. But I really think that this is something that, as you're building these visuals, having a complete understanding of what our districts are expected to do and how this work supports learner outcomes is essential, not only for the success of the project, but also imperative for supporting districts, even when they do not know what they need. We're like, I don't know. Okay, that's a good place to start.
Now that you've said it, it is a quote.
It is.
You said it out loud, it's a quote.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, so some of the things that we're going to talk about, tools. We like free, things that are free that we can use, like Google for Education. It's great. We can build web pages, we can embed stuff in it, and then even just communicating back and forth. So some districts, I'll have like a Google Doc open. They'll give me a punch list, and Julia, Sherrod, me, Taylor, Nicole, everybody will be working on getting this thing fixed, and then we'll just use a Google Doc. It's not really elegant, but it's free and it works. And then we have free. They're great tools to use, but they require somebody that have a lot, have a lot of knowledge. So they're free in terms of you don't have to pay anything extra, just whoever is operating. And then anything that's open source that we can use, there might be some references to that. Things that other collaborative members or other districts have used successfully, those are things that we try to incorporate so that we're not having this huge cognitive load every time we're trying to build something. And then anything that's project specific. So for this project, we need these tools, and this is the only project it applies to. And so we'll identify those as we talk about it. But use low-cost solution for proofs of concept. You'll have a vendor that comes in and says, hey, I'll do all of this for you for the low cost of X. Okay, well, do you have a reference point for that? Do you know how much it will cost? Do you know what you currently have available to you, and some of those things? So, low cost doesn't always mean low cost. The way that we develop does, because we talk about collectively spreading out all of those things with our districts, so that they're not paying it for everybody if we have a service like that. And then any existing resources you have. So I'm like, hey, Jake, I don't understand how they're doing this calculation here. So I can go over to Jake and be like, okay, Jake's a math person. Be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's wrong. Or yeah, that's really good. Or hey, Jake, we're trying to do this piece here, and we can just go back and forth, or through Teams or chat. And I think that's helpful. And then partner with other educational service agencies to lighten the load. So we have 3 in the state of Florida, but there's other ESAs nationally, and there's also conferences for ESAs. They mentioned about tools.
I think we can get into a handful of tools now. So
okay, all right, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right, so I'm here to kind of just talk through, as the slide says, just results and implementation. In my role at NEFEC, I work in the instructional department, and I'm often out in districts, in classrooms with sort of the boots on the ground stakeholders, the teachers, the coaches, the school-based administrators doing regional professional learning with those types of stakeholders. So seeing sort of those who are closest to what we're really all here for, and that's that's student impact. And so working with them, and so I get the opportunity to see how a lot of these tools and resources are implemented, and I also get the opportunity to be very close to seeing why it's so important, and to seeing the need and how that is used. Before NEFEC, I was a classroom teacher, so I have firsthand experience and understanding, like most of us at NEFEC, even many of us that work more in the tech world now. Even Sharad shared in the general session that he was a classroom teacher as well. So we all understand that, and we all see the value. But I also want to share a little bit on kind of a use case of where we weren't taking advantage of the standardization, where we weren't taking advantage of the efficiency and working in a way that was really unsustainable, and how kind of partnering with this standardization and with this collaborative and moving over some of the things we were doing has put us in a much better place for the present, and also looking towards the future. But I do want to talk a little bit about what we were doing and what made it so inefficient, what made it so unsustainable, but also through that how we learned how important that this work was. So we're going to step back in time a little bit, and I'm going to be so bothered by the typo that I don't know how we never saw that before on this slide. I'm going to take us back a little bit to the fall of 2018, and even a little before that, and that was prior to my time at NEFEC. There's lots of sort of public data that is available for any stakeholder in the education world, or even outside of the education world, for someone who is interested or sees value in that world, as far as student assessment goes, from a general level, test design. There's a lot of pieces of information that stakeholders find really important. NEFEC recognized that and began to try to put some of this data together in a way that was easier for educators and stakeholders to sort of interact with and make those great database decisions. In the first version of this, I've heard rumors of massive binders of data that came together from all sorts of different silos, and that was put into visuals and printed out in large PDFs and then given to stakeholders out in the districts. Moving up to the fall of 2018, one of the goals, and this was shortly before I arrived and I came in and kind of helped with this project, one of our goals was to sort of take those pieces of information, like student achievement data, assessment and design data, school and district grades, subgroup data, all of these things that were available that weren't necessarily being used by stakeholders because they were so disparate and they were so siloed. We wanted to find a way to put them together in a way that anyone could interact with, continuing to improve on kind of that model of the binders that had to be passed around. And so a couple of us on the instructional department decided we would take all of those Excel spreadsheets that we could download from the department's website, and we would try to clean them up as much as we could with the skills that we had, which were fairly limited, and then put them into some sort of software that we could then visualize in a way that could be hosted on, like Shane said, like on a Google site or somewhere that anyone could go in and interact with. And so we developed what was kind of the first version of NEFEC's public data visualizations. And these were sort of interactive places that any stakeholder could go and see this visualized data and be able to make those database decisions. So this example you're seeing here is showing fourth grade subtest data from the ELA assessment, and what that looked like over time compared to proficiency, compared to also how the test is sort of designed and made up, how many items are on each test. So lots of really great information. Another one that we looked at was the test design through the content focus on the science and the social science assessments. We were able to visualize that in a way that sort of began to bring things together more than they were before. And then also that subgroup data and how we visualized, taking sort of special care to how different subgroups of students are performing across grade levels and across subject areas across the state. And what we found kind of real quickly through the implementation of that and things like regional professional learning, we would meet with science teachers from across the NEFEC region and use the visualization looking at the design of the science assessments and see across benchmarks where's the value, where's the emphasis, why is the emphasis there, why is that important, and what instructional decisions can we make because of that, using the data profiles to see, well, here's where our students have been historically, here are the trends, here are the areas where we have gaps, the areas where maybe we've moved down, some areas we've been trending up, and some success stories where we could share. In Union County, we've seen lots of growth in one area. What were you guys doing, and what did you recognize to make those decisions? So through those regional professional learnings, we could really use that data, partnering with different organizations in order to sort of continue to expand that message out as well. And we found that through that continued partnership, through that continued implementation, there was and is a big gap to fill. There was a need there, and we were trying to fill that need. We were trying to fill that gap. And we know that because within the first 12 months of those existing, there were over 100,000 instances where one of those visualizations was used. We could track sort of the count and interactions of those visualizations. And in just the first 12 months, over 100,000 times, someone from across the state was interacting and using that data, and I'm hoping using that data to make those database decisions to get back to the classroom. However, moving forward, we realized that we had really limited capacity. It was myself and one other member of our team from the instructional team who every summer when the data would come out, we would spend weeks, if not months, downloading Excel spreadsheets that would just live in a folder on our desktop or in our Google Drive, and we would have to clean them up by hand, just using the tools and the skills that we had, and then upload them into the software, and then continue to clean it up by hand, and then visualize it. And then if there were any changes, because there was no standardization of what we were doing, and the different files that we had couldn't communicate with each other because everything was different, it was starting back over from scratch. And the next summer would roll around and we'd repeat everything, except it would take longer because now we have more data to clean up. And as we got further and further in, we knew it was important because we had this sort of massive audience that was interacting with these tools, but we couldn't keep up. Our capacity was running out. We were spending so much valuable time in the summer working on data, where on our departments, the summertime is really where we're out doing a lot of professional learning with coaches and with teachers and with school and district administrators, and we were losing that opportunity because of the time it was taking. And meanwhile, all this is happening. Shane and the team, through FLCODE and through the standardization of EdFi, is developing other visualizations through the ODS on other data content. We weren't necessarily duplicating work of what was being presented, but living in there as well was also the same data that we were pulling on our own and creating. Just where we thought we were trying to de-silo things, we were actually just creating more data silos and creating more work. And so we wanted to really capitalize on an opportunity to make some new connections. It's something we talked about for a while. I think maybe one of the kind of COVID keepers or positives out of COVID, when we went a year without assessments, it gave us sort of an opportunity to reset, an opportunity to rethink how we were doing things, and we were able to sort of set aside the way that we were doing it and producing that data, and sort of collecting it, and then tap into what was already done, and to make that connection. And really, there were some, I think, sort of 4 key ideas that we had in making that transition. First was just developing for sustainability. Through the first 3 years that we were doing it the way we were, every summer we were running more and more and more out of time, running out of more opportunities. There were new ideas we would have that we couldn't capitalize on because we didn't have the time to pull the data, to clean the data, to put it in, and then still maintain everything else that we already had going. And so it was just this sort of revolving, like, you know, an exponential model of running out of human resource and capacity to get this done. But everything that was burdensome about that was sort of already done, in through the collaborative and through the data standardization and what was sort of already living in the operational data store. And so by connecting there and sort of redeveloping our visualizations from that point, we could just focus on the visualization, on the way that the user is going to interact, the way that the user is going to use and make decisions off of the data from the data visualization. And that's something that is sustainable. That's something that we do have time for. Right. We're letting the technology do the work, the hard stuff for us, so that we can focus on the more human aspect of, you know, those decisions that we can make for how to visualize data to help the decisions that we're going to make for how do we improve student achievement and student growth from those choices. So thinking about sustainability, also thinking about flexibility. In the old model, the way we were doing things, if a district had an idea and like, hey, we love this thing in the data profile, we love the way it looks, but actually it would make more sense if we made this little tweak, because something we're looking for is, you know, fill in the blank with some kind of idea for making a database decision. We'd be starting over from scratch. We'd be going back to square one and redeveloping. But now, because of the operation of data store and the way that things are connected, there's opportunities to kind of change things on the fly, rework things in a matter of minutes or hours versus a matter of weeks or months. So we really have this flexibility, even in some of the projects that are sort of public facing, to the projects that are more secure, that are, you know, based on one district to the other. There's flexibility across those systems because everything is connected back to the same source. Maybe seems a little counter to that, but also developing for consistency. Something else that was happening is everything we were developing that was kind of in our own little siloed world existed in one interface and one software, and then everything that existed on side of the, sort of the other half, existed in another interface and another software. And so if you're, you know, if you were a member of a NEFEC district, looking at public visualizations, you're using one interface, you're using one sort of, you know, set of learning how this visualization works and interacts. And then on the other side, you're having to learn something different. And so now by connecting everything to the same source and visualizing things in the same place, there's a consistency and a better ease of use for any stakeholder that's going to interact. And then also for expansion. Again, because everything is there in that operational data store, if we want to add things, if we want to expand new data sets, new information comes in, there's opportunities for adding on to what we have. We're not starting over. We can pick up where we left off and add on in again, in a matter of minutes or hours, compared to days, months, and weeks to make even sort of the smallest changes or the smallest updates that can happen. And so if you get nothing else from me, I think it's this. It's finding ways that we can sort of collaborate and work together, use what is there, and how EdFi, FLCODE, that standardization of data just makes everything that we do so much easier, because we're all looking back sort of at the same place, speaking the same language to connect to, and just the sort of the ease, the efficiency, the sustainability that comes with that has made certainly my job much easier, and make me look much better than I think I actually am at this job. So.
Sweet. So building capacity. Thank you, Jake. I know it's crazy. It's like I'm just felt like I was talking so much, but yeah, it's really good to think about that perspective. And it's like, I think about one of you sitting out there right now. It's like, oh man, I thought we were just going to be building visualization. I thought we were going to be creating something, and that's great. We can do that in our Ask Me Anything sessions right after this one. But you also want to think about, we talked about these. Not only the tools that we use, but like some things that just need to be present in order for you to be effective in your visualizations. So like focus on a use case. So Jake talked a little bit about, regional professional learning. Well, we know that the educators that are involved in that are going to be interacting in this way. Okay, let's create this with their feedback, with them as an active partner, about things they really absolutely need, the things that they would kind of want, and then those gold plating things a little bit later on. And part of that iterative process is working with them. And the word I said was iterative, in case I mumbled that one. You don't want just a functional team that just bangs out reports, just, okay, that's all I'm going to do is report. You want a team that's really going to transform your practice. So I get probably 90% of the requests once I've created a report are, hey, can this export to Excel? And it takes like years off of my life when somebody says, I know what the value is for it. If we really create that use case and work interactively, it may take more time, but we don't want that information, all those data to be downloaded to somebody's computer, because then they become static. They're no longer dynamic. They're no longer responding to things that are happening outside, and they live wherever that file has been downloaded to. So again, iterate, collaborate, and find the right size for your solution. If you go with, you go, hey, I really want to create some visualizations. This vendor says they'll do this. Well, that's awesome. You also want to make sure that if you switch to a vendor, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, that you own your data and it's not just being modeled and prepped for their system. And that's part of having the EdFi data standards. Regardless of what vendor or system interacts with it, it's yours. You don't have to request it from anybody. It's yours in an operational data store. So really, you want to avoid ill-defined use cases. So like if you say, yeah, some teachers are going to be looking at some reports and stuff, so they just need like historical assessment information. Holy cow. I would not even know where to start with that. You want to avoid that functional team, somebody that only has a singular focus. Having a perspective, a mosaic, being able to get different perspectives is really helpful. Even if somebody feels like it's a waste of their time, their perspective is valuable. So avoiding a functional team is great. And that's just the opposite of transformational. You want them to be functional, but not only functional. Publish when you're ready. Like, okay, I'm going to publish this report. Okay, don't stop there. Go back to it. Avoid, like I mentioned, the vendor-centric solutions. Try to think about, okay, in 10 years, are we going to have access to this? Are we going to be able to do these things? And sometimes the easiest solution is the worst solution. I put the quotation marks. The only way you know it's the easiest is if you involve that transformational team in when you're developing. So we have just a minute left. So from all of the people in the room, I'm going to pick a prize. I'm going to have Jake pick the number because I have them written. I have them down here. But some of the next steps. So again, this is recorded. We'll send it out to you as a follow-up. Here's some people that you can reach out to ask some questions about. We have communities of practice and all this other stuff. I'm going to zip through that. Here's our contact information. You can reach out to us if you have questions for follow-up. But again, Ask Me Anything. Come see us, and we'll talk a little bit more about it.